Welcome to another session. I hope that you are well. In today's session, I would like to speak to the topic, the unusual path. The unusual path. Let me preface what I intend to convey to you in today's session with the following statements. I have, over the years, made recommendations to both men and women with regards to waiting, delaying, and taking the unusual path with regards to relationships. One of such recommendations is that the age 35 for men should be the point at which most men in the West, not all men, but primarily men in the West. And let me clarify what I mean by the West. I'm speaking specifically to parts of the previous Anglosphere, places where you might say the origin connected to Great Britain or England, Canada, Australia, the United States, and perhaps even extending it to one or two parts outside of continental Europe, and certainly North America, such as maybe Singapore. But in many cases, in many ways, I'm talking about the original parts of the Anglosphere. They have very similar values and belief systems and rules of engagement as we have in Great Britain. Obviously, Europe is a next door neighbour to Great Britain, and therefore you can include parts of Europe, but limited parts of Europe, the likes of Germany and France, and you might say the more developed parts of Europe. The Baltic states and the Slavic countries are still very traditional in the way they are raised and the way they interact with people. They still have glimpses of what should be, you might say, gender roles, gender responsibilities, and gender relationships. 35 for men is a number that I have recommended partly as a result of my lived life. For women, I recommend 27, women in the West. 27 being when you should start considering relationships. Prior to that, I say it's fine to just date. Dating referring to perhaps nothing too long-term in a commitment. Now there is I might say, a conflict of interest. I recommend to women to choose their partners carefully, their sexual partners carefully. But if she has to wait until 27, then it means that between 18 and 27, she's playing an iterative game of trying to choose a short-term partner, but doing so in a manner that doesn't increase her body count and minimize the possibility of pair bonding when she's ready. So it's a conundrum that we have. The same applies for men. Men between 18 and 35 are playing a short-term mating strategy. And the purpose of using the short-term strategy is not necessarily because being with one person is the wrong way to go about it. I actually think it's better to be with just one person if you can. I don't recommend multiple partners, sexual partners, and emotional partners because of the damage it has on the person over the long term. But, and this is a big but, how do you manage the process of dating and not committing long term? At the core of that recommendation is the following. Relationships and people we meet in relationship, even with good intentions, even good people with good values, the unintended consequences of starting relationships too early and going past the short-term strategy and moving into or redefining a relationship from short to long term is you risk sacrificing your purpose, your ambitions, your potential, and you introduce the possibility of becoming a father or a mother earlier than you should have, which in itself acts as a headwind to your success. It also risks robbing you of the identity that you perhaps could have created for yourself had you finished something such as college, a profession, going into your career, traveling the world, achieving something before the whole responsibility of fatherhood or motherhood, but certainly before the responsibility of husband or wife. So in today's session, what I'd like to do is expand on some of my observations and my lived experience. Over the weekend, I was out at a restaurant, and I was served by people in the restaurant. I am normally quite pleased when I see very young people serving or working in a restaurant. Now, by young, I'm referring to people perhaps who are not quite 18 years yet. You're still below 18. And seeing people who are 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 gives me some excitement, because they're learning skills that can be transferred. You know, how to serve people, how to listen, how to take orders, how to be precise, how to communicate, sometimes even how to sell. You present the menu and you explain the benefits of one over the other. But first of all, you solicit information. What do you like? Have you got any allergies? Do you like sweet? Do you like savory? And you use that to put together a solution to the client, in this case, someone who's come for food. And it enables you to connect with people, communicate with people, build a network. I do not share the same, you might say, fondness when I see people who are much older, say people who are in their 30s and 40s and 50s, serving as waiters or waitresses. Now, let me start by saying as follows. We all play the card that we are dealt. And forgive me, let me respond to something. We all play the card that we are dealt. And that means that we have to take what we are given as a hand, and we try to play the best that we can. Sometimes we have bad cards and we play the best we can. I'm not going to be speaking to the exceptions to the rule. I'm speaking about the majority. And for the majority of people, when I see someone who is in his 50s, who has worked as a waiter or a waitress, or who's working in some level of a blue collar job, not that there's anything wrong with it, but who has not transitioned, who has stayed stuck in the same position for 10, 15, 20 years. What it reminds me of is a formula for success that wasn't executed effectively. Because we should grow, we should learn, we should progress. You can start as a junior waiter, then you move to a senior waiter, then you perhaps move to a manager, then you become a manager of different stores. You don't stay stuck. When I have interacted with people who are 40, 50, sometimes even 30, and who have been doing the same job for 10, 15 years, there is almost like a best fit line across both male and female. They have a family, but they started their family very young. Sometimes the woman got pregnant at 16, and therefore she was forced into being responsible. Unlike parts of the West where you have support, in other countries, you have to work, or the money has to come from your siblings or your loved ones. So they have to work. But effectively, you become a mother whilst you were still a child, or you become a father whilst you were still a child. The responsibility for provision protection goes to the father. The responsibility for nurturing and ensuring that the child is safe goes to the mother. And so people stay stuck on the success path because of a choice or a decision they made, or because of a moment of pleasure that went wrong. I have met therefore many people who have their children very early, and they all make the same, you might say, proclamations, which has to do with how much they love their children and how much they never would have changed anything. I also see something which is a frustration, especially the older the person is, a frustration, a look on the person's face because the person understands and realizes that they have not fulfilled their potential. Or on a daily basis, they are reminded of the goals, the dreams that they once had, but it's now a distant memory. They would never have the opportunity. Why? Because they have a responsibility to the children or to the family, and therefore that dream has been placed on the back burner. So when I recommend men to wait until 35, I do so for a reason. And when I recommend to ladies and women to wait until 27, I do so for a reason. Up until age 18, you're dependent on your parents or your guardians. I start counting from 18 because that's when you are an adult functionally and from a societal perspective. I know some societies have a different age, but 18 in the UK. For most men, and here's my thought process. You go to college, 18 to 22. Sometimes you graduate at 21, depending on the course that you take. But 18 to 22, you have 5 years. 23, assuming you've graduated, you start working. Most men do not do things in a straight line. But to become proficient, to go from having graduated and having a degree to becoming proficient and having a career, you need to invest time. About 10,000 hours is what is noted to be necessary to have developed a competency. 10,000 hours of constant, never-ending growth and improvement. So you're doing things over and over again with precision, but applying 3 things: introspection and reflection, plus progress. Now, if there's some pain involved, it accelerates the growth. If there is no pain involved, it slows down the growth. If you introspect as a result of pain, something you've done wrong that enables you to go back and course correct and make changes, then you accelerate and compound your learning process. 10,000 work hours is equivalent to 5 years. Men tend to do things in what I call a squiggly fashion. We don't go from A to B in a straight line. We squiggle, we go around because we make mistakes or we're not mature yet. So I usually add an extra year, which would be the same as 20% extra. So 6 years. So you go from 23 plus 6 years. That takes you to 29 as you now have come into perhaps a place where you're proficient at something. I allow an extra year for transitioning. That year could be for traveling, for doing things. That brings you to 30. So from 30, at age 30, most men, if you follow the success path, you should have developed a competency, a number of skills, an attitude, and certain behaviors that guarantee success at whatever level. You may have come to 30, you may be financially along the path to what you want, but the one thing you haven't done is you haven't developed your masculine frame. You've been apprenticing, learning under someone's time, being paid to learn. You focused on your career, your financial goals and dreams, your professional goals and dreams, but you haven't focused on your purpose or that aspiration you might have. I therefore allow years 30 to 35 as an opportunity for you to go out into the wilderness and fail. As a man, most men are only as successful as the temptations they overcome. And every man is only as faithful to his dreams and purpose relative to the temptations he overcomes. And in relationships, most relationships hang on the balance of the level of temptations that he has successfully overcome. You're only as faithful as the temptations you overcome. Those temptations come during your phase of manhood. And there are three normally that you will be tested for. One is money or wealth. The second is power, fame, influence. And the third is your loins, sex, the desire for sex. If you master those, you have the right foundation for what life will bring your way. Now, here's what's fascinating about men. The moment you choose a goal, the obstacle is created. Nature tests your resolve. So the more temptations you overcome, you get stronger. But it doesn't guarantee more are not coming. There will be more created to test your resolve. 30 to 35, therefore, those 5 years, would be equivalent to another 10,000 hours of you doing what you wish in your inner core that you need. The first 5 years may have been foundation, setting up the foundation to enable you go out and pursue that business plan, that purpose, that goal. Understand yourself, discover yourself, and fail without the pressure of a family unit. At 35, your shoulders are ready. You have developed a masculine frame. You've developed your manhood value to a level that is considerate. You've also developed your character value to a place that is considerate. I explain manhood value and character value in other sessions. I think it's quite useful. I have a playlist that says how to assess a man's value, or it could be a guide to a man's value. I think that's what it is. And I cover the various ways that I assess a man's value. Character value, gentleman's value, your manhood value, your sexual marketplace value, your non-sexual marketplace value, and more. At 35, you've built the right foundation for which to take on the responsibility of other people. Now you can start taking relationships very seriously because, one, you've developed the frame, you come into your masculinity, you understand who you are, you failed, you have a goal, you have a vision, and therefore you can invite a woman into your life to say, this is my plan. The plan is based on a goal. The goal is based on a vision. The vision is based on my purpose. And you have my purpose before you. Does my purpose align with yours? Can yours merge with mine? Would you join me on the path towards the future? A woman therefore can make a choice. Now the woman is making that choice at 27 for the following reasons. Just like you, she is not defined by the ability to cook or clean. I marvel at men and women who refer to cooking and cleaning as a woman's role or what she brings into a relationship. I think it's so trivial, I find it very irritating. For example, cooking and cleaning does not make a woman feminine. It doesn't. If it does, then I think I am also very feminine. I guess I never knew I was a woman. Over the weekend, I was with my brother. Very clean. You wouldn't find spots in his house. You would assume that he has someone come in and clean every day, and he's a phenomenal cook. It doesn't make him a woman. It doesn't make him feminine. A woman's value is not linked to her ability to clean and cook. The kitchen is not a woman's place. Let me say that again for women and men who don't understand. The kitchen is not the woman's place. A woman's place is on your laps, sitting there and inspiring you and reminding you that you are king, and reminding you of the purpose that you have, and inspiring you, motivating you through her words and her peace by bringing in a serene environment to you, to your Garden of Eden, by serving you, but not necessarily physically or through cooking and cleaning. A woman therefore goes through the same stages as a man with some subtle corrections. 18 to 22, college. 23, she has the same timeline as you to go through life. 5 hours, you might say 5 years of practice. So at 23, she starts her 5 years, and that brings her just to the start of 27. So from 27, she can start considering. Why? Because at that point, she's gained the 10,000 hours of practice. The difference here with women is most women tend to choose careers that are not necessarily in the STEM field. So they tend to graduate sometimes at 22, 21. So at 26, 27, usually the start of 27, she's had 10,000 hours of practice. She's an accountant, she's a doctor, perhaps she's a whatever profession, surgeon, you name it. But she has a profession, not a job. Most people have jobs, few people have careers. The reason most people have jobs has to do with what I said before, which is we're led poorly, we have no examples and people telling us what to do, and then we start families too early. We make mistakes, and therefore we can't build a career because we can't go to college, and because we're not working hard enough, and we have no ambition, we can't dream. So at 27, a woman has therefore achieved an identity outside of a man and outside of a family unit. At that point in the West, she can lean towards a relationship of profound significance, and she can lean on the man just as he leans on her. So what that means is, as a lady, you're also playing a similar role in your pursuit of some meaning outside of your, you might say, societal, or outside of the societal limitations placed on women based on roles and responsibilities and gender. You want to get to a place where you've achieved something and you have an identity outside of what the family or the relationship bestows on you. At 27, therefore, you can start entertaining long-term relationships, possibly marriage if that's to your taste and liking, and starting a family. The implication of that would mean that as a woman, that you've achieved some success and you have a career. And as the man, you've achieved some success and you have a career. That foundation compounds over time. Success compounds. Failure compounds. And if you both achieved a level of success before you start the relationship, the likelihood that the relationship will sabotage your dream is much lower. You meet someone at 22, the person could convince you to go against your purpose and your dream, and you then sabotage your potential on the basis of love or an emotion or promises that most people seldom keep. The idea is for you to become something of yourself, achieve something for yourself, and allow yourself the time in between to date around so you understand what you like. I'm not suggesting you sleep around with everyone you date, but we should encourage people dating more often and more casually. Now, for men, dating is synonymous with having sex. So for the woman, you want to date without giving up sex. The man wants to date, but get as much sex as he can. Both of you are playing a game for which, sadly, from a perspective of the woman, because you pay the heavier penalty of reproduction, you as the woman want to ensure you minimize the likelihood of reproducing for the wrong person. Men, we pay a lower penalty for sex, and therefore we want to get as much as we can. Whoever plays the game properly wins. It's like a war. Now, all is fair in love and war. So you find some gimmickry between the men and the women, and which is why I say dating is a false game. People are putting across a facade in order to get what they want. In any case, the purpose and the thrust of the conversation is to say, by waiting and doing things in the right sequence, you graduate, you start your profession, you have a career, and then you start a relationship, and family comes after the relationship. I go as far as saying, as a woman, make sure when you start dating at 27, seriously, you do not have children within the first 3 years, because sometimes the in-love phase lasts about 2.5 years. If you've got married to the wrong person at, say, 27, and you discover at 30 that he is the wrong person, you can dissolve the relationship if you choose to, without the burden of having reproduced for a man who walks away, and therefore you're now stuck with a liability, a responsibility that will limit your ability to pair bond and find another partner. Similarly for the men, you dated for about 3 years before you commit, because relationships, men are gatekeepers, and therefore we pay a heavier penalty. And dating, and as you go into the relationship, taking steps to make sure you pre-qualify the women carefully, and you choose the right person, but by ensuring that even if you get married at 35 and it doesn't work in the first 3 years, you can call it to a halt. You can stop it immediately without reproducing and having bastards run around society without an intact two-parent family. People who choose that pathway tend to find that they find success much sooner and much quicker than those who refuse this simple approach. And the people I meet, generally speaking, as I go around society, I tend to look and ask questions. People who are waiters, waitresses, and have been doing the same job for 10, 15 years, no progress. Why? They made a mistake too early. Other people who work in other blue-collar jobs, nothing wrong with that, but stuck there 10, 15 years, they made a mistake too early. So it's important for you to recognize it's not that difficult to be successful. And success, in this particular instance, is you discovering who you are, your purpose, why you're here, and trying to bring to some fruition that drive, whatever excites and ignites that inner part of you, before you give yourself to another person. And by doing so, by going through the delayed process, you get to discover what your purpose is. So when a man comes to you and says, would you join me in this pathway or this adventure? You can say, well, your purpose seems exciting and it seems great, but it's opposite to mine. So whilst you're a great person, we're wrong together, because we will not walk together, because our purposes do not agree. We do not align. And vice versa for the man. Waiting until you come to your manhood, therefore protects you against your errors, your mistakes, and future regrets. Now I'm going to stop today's session here, and I hope it's been of some value.